Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout. We're an entrepreneur and therapist exploring how technology is shaping mental health and what it means for how we live, connect, and care for ourselves. I'm Tony Teixeira. I'm the therapist.
And I'm Jackie Toll, the entrepreneur. How are you doing this week, Tony?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay, but just really been kind of upset about some news that hit yesterday or the day before, and Sarah probably knows about it. There is a partnership between Alma and Aetna. Aetna is a health insurance company, and Alma is one of these big box companies that is a platform that therapists kind of go on and they're able to work through them and get reimbursement from insurance companies. Well, the partnership they created and what Aetna has done, and it's probably going to do, I'm thinking so it's setting a really bad precedent for what might happen. And that's they have first of all told basically therapists that they really all need to do the shorter version. I won't bore you with the codes of the therapy sessions, but the shorter version has to be what therapists need to do. They need to do a 38 to 43 minutes session, and which pays less, of course, but also that the bigger concern is that clients aren't going to get the support that they need, especially if it's indicated that they need a higher level of care. So that's really concerning. And they've also cut the rate across the board. So no matter what level you're at in terms of degree wise, if you're a PhD or an LCSW, everyone is getting the same rate. So this is really concerning, not only for people who are trying to make a living, but what it means for the mental health field. And how people who have higher needs, how those needs are not going to get met. So we're getting into this really slippery slope of how technology now is shaping mental health and shaping people's mental health. And there's going to be really personal and professional repercussions for this. There's ethical issues around this. And all of that. And so I'm glad we have Sarah here today, because I think she probably has some thoughts about this too. I'm sure you saw the news, but we'll get to that.
Yeah,
we'll get to that.
That's so. I didn't even know that was like an option.
We're
bully
talking
people into like short therapy sessions. I mean, jeepers Christ! Like sometimes, like you just barely feel like 30. It takes 30 minutes to kind of just start.
Yeah.
So that's wild. Sorry,
but this is not what should be dictating mental health. The code, what code you're supposed to use should not be dictating, mental health. Oh, and by the way, they said to therapists, yeah, of course, if the client needs more time, you can give them more time, but that's going to be out of your pocket. So they're
Cool.
laying the burden on the therapist because they can't say ethically that you can't use that time. You can use the time, but we're not going to pay you for it.
Right, but it's like free. It's volunteer work for you at that point. Wow.
So that's where I'm at today.
Yeah.
I'm a little feisty. So
I can understand.
How about you, Jackie?
I'm tired. My oldest daughter is moving from Tennessee to Jacksonville to start her clinical rotations in medical school. And I was doing weekend number 2 of the move. Last weekend was when we were supposed to get the majority of stuff moved. And this was supposed to be a lighter weekend. And it turned out to not be. And included a surprise 5-hour round trip, night drive in the Smoky Mountains with a car full of stuff. With windshield wipers that didn't work. Oh my gosh, I was just like beside myself. But thankfully, a really nice set of gentlemen in a Walmart parking lot helped me change my windshield wiper plates. And I felt like the helpless woman, but I didn't care. I was like on the verge of tears.
So stressful.
Right? And so like I'm happy to be home. I wish this weekend would be a relaxing weekend, but it's going to be a busy one too. But hopefully the following weekend I'll get caught up on laundry and all this stuff. I haven't cooked a meal in like 3 weeks, so it just feels weird. But I am so excited to jump into our topic today. I know we teased it a little bit, but would you like to introduce Sarah?
I would love to.
Yay.
So Sarah's with us. Sarah LaFontaine is a licensed mental health counselor who has spent her career at the intersection of clinical care, organizational health, and systems change. And she runs 3 businesses. She provides clinical service through Rising Hope Counseling Services and workshops through her business, MindfulHQ. And she's also begun some development in a new and exciting area that I hope she'll talk about today. That's Mindful Matches. That's her latest business. And this is where she's helping people connect with therapists that are genuinely right for them, not just people who are like kind of available, but like really having that good match. So, Sarah, I looked at some of the things that you've done, and I really love what it is you're doing and how you try to understand like what the underlying problem is so that you can develop the solution for real change instead of like just kind of figuring out, oh, what do people want? It's really based on, you know, what the problem is and how can we solve it. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, for having me. I am so excited about it. I can't wait to have all the conversations with you.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So I am just interested in learning more about two aspects of your business, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little more information. One, your Mindful HQ, because I think it's so interesting how you get into like why training so stick and workshops aren't closing the gap. And I'm so interested to learn more about that. And then also your Mindful Matches component. But why don't we start with Mindful HQ if that works for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mindful HQ is kind of my response to my clients coming into session with me and complaining about where they work. And I'm very much a systems kind of thinker. I actually keep getting confused for a licensed clinical social worker instead of an LMHC, which our tech folks might not get the joke, but our mental health folks definitely will. Yeah, everyone keeps thinking I am. And I embrace it because I kept seeing my clients come into session and going, oh, my boss and this and the work environment that. And so I started Mindful HQ. It is my speaking and consulting company. And what I do is I provide trainings and consultation work to different companies, essentially to help them create an environment where they can compensate for some of the issues that they keep having from a culture perspective. One of the things that I see a whole lot of is that companies are genuinely trying to make their work environments more accessible, more accepting, warm, because they want good retention and they continue to see a lot of burnout. And one of the things that I think keeps getting missed is the fact that there are so many things inherent in the environment that are just kind of assumed. I call them friction points. So to me, friction is all of the things seen and unseen that prevent you from being at your peak state of being. So for a company, this would be we have really great retention, we have low burnout, we have low turnover, our employee wellness surveys are coming back with really great scores, things are moving well together, we aren't having a lot of people on PIPs, all of those things, right? And what I see is that a lot of these environments still continue to have too many friction points. And the thing where I think this doesn't translate from the trainings and the awareness surveys and stuff, that kind of stuff, into the environment is that sometimes they're just not aware that these things are there. Other times, the trainings will tell them what it is, but not necessarily how to apply it to their own environment. And it's one of those things, kind of like coming to therapy. If I knew how to solve the problem on my own, I would have done it already and not had to come to therapy. So I kind of think of Mindful HQ as like therapy for companies,
I
right?
love
We go
that.
into it and we figure out what all of the things are. And one of the cornerstones is also just psychological safety at the forefront. Do your employees actually feel safe and comfortable coming to you with these issues, or are they more likely to just kind of mask and keep them in and, just kind of then that almost defaults them to the path of burnout and leaving because there are actually no opportunities. And so then the people left in the company are kind of blindsided and like, I don't know what happened. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but the employee had that answer the whole entire time. They just didn't feel comfortable being able to come forward. So those are some of the things that I work with companies on at Mindful HQ. And I love the work.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Last week, Tony and I had talked about an article that really shocked me. But it was about an employer who was providing like mental health resources. I think it was through Talkspace, if I'm right, Tony.
Right.
And then the transcripts of all of those communications, like 100 got called into discovery in a wrongful termination lawsuit. And so like not just like notes, but like every word. So like that really shook up like my thought of like trust from an employee perspective in the resources even that people are off the company is offering, and how that might be turned against you. And again, that's not everywhere, but I think the work that you're doing is so important because it's like there's a person there, there's and you're leading in the you know not just from like the tech standpoint, but from like the organizational standpoint, right? I'm totally against corporate
Yeah.
personhood, but I think it
Yeah.
makes sense here.
Yeah. I think that organizations can do a pretty decent job sometimes in bringing people to do wellness and like kind of put programs together, but to do it from that clinical, ethical standpoint and have it integrated. That was what came to mind when you were talking about this lawsuit with Talkspace and the employer, is that there was no one really thinking about what the ramifications were of doing that, like, kind of splashing that out there. So I really feel like when we're talking about mental health, we really need mental health professionals who are doing it, not people who think they understand mental health or doing something good to help people. There's
Yeah.
a little bit more, it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
I have a horror story from my husband, unfortunately, and he's
Mhm.
a military veteran and currently still serving as a reservist on the weekends. His company is very proud about hiring veterans. There's quite a few people who have a history of military service and deployments. And the company, with all good intentions, hired a speaker to come in and talk about team development. And he touted himself as a military service member who had done several deployments and now took that experience and went around talking. And from my husband's explanation of what happened, quite a bit of the talk, this hour-long talk, was actually him trauma dumping on all of them and unexpectedly showing clips of active combat zones, and to the point where, my husband handled it as best he could, but he had the coworkers checking in on him afterwards saying, "Hey, you okay?" Because he's also very open with his colleagues about the fact that he has PTSD from his deployments. And so it was just very inappropriately handled. So I think the guy was trying to get this point across of like growing a team through adversity, but at the same time, from my clinical perspective, because in my private practice, I specialize in complex trauma and have worked with service members for many years as well, is that teamwork is more based on a trauma bond than actual stable mental health and coming together with great skills and emotional regulation and all of these other things that really benefit. And so, yeah, it was, the company didn't have any ill intention. The guy who did the talk didn't have any ill intention, and yet the execution was not what it should have been. And I think really highlights Tony's point that some of these conversations, even if it doesn't seem like it needs to be done by a mental health professional, is definitely you experience the benefit of it happening from a mental health professional.
Do companies see you on like a regular basis, like people would engage with therapy? Is that sort of the model, or is it more on an as needed one time basis, or a blend?
It's kind of an à la carte. So I talk with companies and see what their needs are, where their budget is, and just try and help them stretch every dollar if, they're on a tighter budget or whatnot. So if they're needing more help, then I work with them sometimes on a monthly basis. I'm going over with different managers. We're doing an audit of what their skills are, what the environment is like, where we need to make changes, doing trainings for managers and also for employees all the way up the corporate food chain, so to speak. For others, it's one-off trainings. It's just really whatever we're seeing. But overall, I'm upfront with them of like, okay, so we're going to do this training, but I'm also seeing these other issues, just so that even if they don't do anything about them, they at least are aware of them and can take that into consideration. I hate not helping people or organizations. It's going to come up so often in the podcast.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm never a gatekeeper of information or skills.
That's awesome. I think Tony shared something with me late last week. I think it was, or early this week. Who knows? But it was somewhat related to the idea of like, if you're, putting on a webinar or doing like a training as a therapist, like there are these people that are trying to hijack that and then post them on this site. Tony, do you
Yeah.
remember what that was more specifically?
Yeah, so there's a company that will send people to paid webinars. They'll actually pay to enter the webinar, and they'll record it unbeknownst to the workshop leader, the trainer, and then give it to this company that's uploading it so then people can, for a very low price, get the information from that webinar. Yeah, I see
And
the look of shock on your face, Sarah.
well, and I think
Shock and
Sarah's like
horror.
approach kind of
Yeah.
protects that to some extent more, right? Because you're at least within the confines of a company. I imagine if you as a company thought, oh, we're doing all the right things, we're going to send people to this webinar, and then that gets posted somewhere,
Right. And for mental health, I mean, the implications for that are, for a lot of training, sometimes somebody will do a demo and
Yeah.
they will do a real life experience. So they're really a client, and they're in the client seat, and you kind of in that environment where you feel like you're with your peers and you volunteer for that, and it's really heartfelt. And then to know it's out there, it's just a sense of betrayal in so many different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an exploitation of vulnerability.
Yes.
Right. And it goes
Right.
against that. You work so hard as a trainer to create a safe place for people to come and share and be vulnerable. And then to have that be taken advantage of so that a third party can then financially benefit from it. That feels gross to me.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was pretty shocked.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about mindful matches. I think this concept is really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so Mindful Matches is my current baby. It's going to launch in the beginning of July of this year, and it is a mental health directory that kind of operates differently than a lot of the ones that are out there right now. So, some of the main ones that people know about are Psychology Today, Zen Care, Mental Health Match, inclusive therapists, things like that. And they all have their pros and cons, just like any product that's out there. But I've been a therapist for 13 years now. There's just things that keep popping up, right? And like I said, a fixer and a systems thinker. So I just kept getting frustrated by the things that we weren't able to do with current directories. So Mindful Matches takes a slightly different approach. We integrate things about personality connections, that interpersonal relationship that happens in a therapy space, so that people can search by that as well. In addition to being more nuanced and detailed with all the different specialties and treatment issues that people are looking for. There is definitely a difference between someone who works with OCD versus PTSD. I mean, and even within PTSD, there's complex PTSD, because of childhood trauma, because of sexual assaults, because of natural disasters, right? And so there's a whole lot of specificity that you just don't really get. And with a lot of directories, what you end up happening is that you do a search and then you get anywhere from like 5 to 20 pages of therapists and no way to refine it anymore. And so then you are kind of already in this almost crisis space, recognizing that you need a therapist and then just doing the best that you can to find someone, and then still in a position where you feel overwhelmed. And because of this level of nuance and what providers work with, you could go through the first 2 pages, maybe only find one person who might even possibly do the work that you need them to do. And you've gone through 20 therapists, and then you have to reach out. So, what Mindful Matches does, it takes into account all of those different things. And we also have an internal facing directory too, because so many providers will refer to each other and, between mental health and mental health provider or medical providers. And there's no really good way for them to vet that more clinical professional criteria that we have. Maybe we're talking, I call it our clinical language, right? Because every profession has this, sub dialect that they speak in, right? When I started working in the corporate world with high achievers in my private practice, I had to learn corporate speak so that I could really literally talk my client's language and understand what they're talking about. So it was easier for them to come into the therapy room and just be able to speak what their natural language was and know that they were understood. Same with my military families when I worked with them. And so we do that with our internal provider directory. You have to be a licensed, registered provider on the site in order to be able to have access to that directory. And it's an opportunity for the mental health providers that are listed there to be able to talk about all of the things that they wouldn't normally say to clients, but is important information that all of our other providers are looking for. And then the thing that I really love the most about Mindful Matches is that we have a crisis response network. So this is the piece that speaks to my heart. So I live in Rhode Island, and I have lived in Rhode Island my whole entire life, and actually grew up in Providence. And so when the shooting at Brown University happened in December of 2025, it hit me because I literally grew up in and around the campus. So I knew exactly what building they were talking about and the neighborhood around it because I had hung out around there with my friends in high school. And I saw all of these amazing therapists in private practice reaching out and saying, hey, I can do this for the community. I can do that for the community. And because they don't specialize in it and they don't have a connection already, it was almost falling on deaf ears. And so I realized that we need something to be able to bring everyone together and to be able to amplify all of these beautiful voices. So I just did something simple. I created a Google form that fed into a Google Sheet, put that together, and I sent it out to as many people as I could. My friends were absolutely amazing with this too. And as soon as we heard that the students were going to be going home right away, we sent it out across the country. And so we ended up having 580 therapists sign up to provide any variety of mental health services that they were able to. I let them all know whatever they can offer, even if it's just saying, hey, I specialize in treating trauma and I can help you. Regular fee, here's the insurances I take, low fee, no fee support groups, whatever it is, here I am and I'm willing and able to help. And it was absolutely incredible. And we got it into the hands of the students and they were sending it around to each other like wildfire. And we sent it over to the students at RISD too, because that was one of the things that was not really well known is that the Rhode Island School of Design has a very close relationship with Brown University. But because they're technically a separate school, a lot of their students were cut off from all the resources because you had to have a brown.edu email address in order to verify that you were able to get these services. And they have a risd.edu email address. So even something as simple as that was this major barrier. So we ended up coordinating with the director at the Counseling and Psychological Services Department at RISD to get them access to all of these other services that we as a community were just providing. So I realized I'm like, this is happening all over. The events in Minnesota were happening. We actually ended up having another shooting in Rhode Island just 2 months after, when we really haven't had any significant crises like that in our state. So it really just rocked the community twice over. And I was like, you know what? This needs to be part of it. We have such an incredible resource in private practice clinicians who are willing and able to step up because we have our practices set up to benefit us and to really support us mentally and emotionally in a way that a lot of other places, because of needing to carry certain caseloads and things like that, it's just really hard. It's a lot harder to do. And so everyone just kind of keeps stepping forward and stepping up online. I'm like, you know what? This can give us all a voice instead of just, hey, I'm an individual, as opposed to, hey, we're a company that provides support that matches people with providers. And here's this extra thing. So it's a double opt-in directory for clinicians. They have to opt in to getting notices about it to begin with. And it's all based on where they're licensed, so that we already have that as a good gatekeeping kind of balance. And then the other piece is that they have to opt into individual events as well. And they can opt in and opt out at any time on their own dashboard, so that they really do have full control over their own mental health, what their capacity is, all of this stuff. So yeah, that's my baby. I'm always smiling
That's
when I talk
wonderful.
about it because I just love it so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I can see that, and your efforts to create this crisis system is just amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. That's just
Yeah.
going to benefit so many people. What I really find interesting about the mindful matches, though, is it feels like it's a bottom up rather than a top down approach. Top down being like Psychology Today, they decide what the categories are, and people are limited to that. And I think you built it from the bottom up, really going to people and asking them, what is it you want? asking them questions to find out more about those nuanced pieces so that you would have the right filters. I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I spent so much time going to different providers because we not just have therapists on it, we have prescribers as well. So, psychiatric nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, all of them too. And just saying, like, what are you missing from the current directories? What are you looking for? And then going to medical providers too and saying, what would make it easier to refer someone to a mental health provider? And one of the things that we do with networking is we will, we'll get coffee with someone or we'll meet up at an event and exchange business cards. And we have information about how they run their practice at that moment, right? And typically that information will go into a spreadsheet of some kind so that we can reference later for ourselves. But it's not a live document. And so it doesn't stay updated. But one of the things that every single provider does is that whenever they change what insurance they take or what population they work with or something like that, they always go and they update their directory listing because they want to make sure that like the people who go on to these are going to get the most accurate, up-to-date information. So it was really like, how can I take that and turn this into this easier piece? And so what all of our providers can do, our medical providers and any individual who's looking for mental health, they can save profiles too, and create their own like favorites list of individuals. One of the things that we're planning on rolling out too is that, especially for our medical providers and on that internal provider directory, if the provider you want to refer to is not currently accepting new clients, you can see who they have in their network of other providers that do
Who they
similar
refer
or same
to.
work and who they refer to,
Oh, that's so
essentially.
cool.
So you can kind of we have this kind of light over their own network of who they like to work with, what they do, all of these things, and you can search through all of that. And one of the other things that I kept hearing come up over and over again was just that people aren't feeling like they get a lot of bang for their buck with directories. So they're spending sometimes between $30 to $60 a month on a directory and they're not getting a lot. And especially for new providers who are really wanting to leave environments that are not beneficial for their mental health, the cost is a real burden to that. So we have a free tier, a free subscription that people can sign up for. And if you're a provider, then you get an external facing, so a client facing directory profile, essentially what you would normally pay for on all of the other directories, we give you for free. And what you would end up paying for, essentially, if you choose to be a paid subscriber, is that internal provider facing directory. And then some of our other benefits, you get hosted on our podcast. We feature you on our social media, newsletter, all these other things. You get prioritized support on certain issue, on any issue that you bring up to us, all of those things. And we have it set up as a pay what you can model. So it's just $10 a month minimum. And then you can choose how much or how little you want to pay after that so that it really is as equitable as possible. I mean, I really don't think that providers should have any more barriers to doing the work that they do and getting found for the work that they do. And honestly, it's a popular concept. Everyone loves hearing the pay what you can, and some people are like, well, I'm going to join before you raise the price. Just told a friend of mine that yesterday. I was like, girl, I'm not raising the price. Like, it's pay what you can, pay what you want. If you want to pay more than that, you can. I'm not going
Right.
to
If you get a lot
stop
of
you.
value
But
out of it, yeah.
yes,
Be
absolutely.
a good partner and share some of that back with the community. But
100%. And if you aren't, then it's a good signal to me that I need to have some more conversations and change some things up because we're missing the mark. And we need to continue to create that safe space so that our providers can tell us what's going on instead of just leaving. So I try to practice what I preach.
that's awesome. I know that there's this big push for like AI chat agents that handle therapeutic interactions with people either as a replacement or as a stopgap. And one of the reasons that people say that it's necessary is that it democratizes access to care, and there's a shortage of care available. And since you're deep into this and creating these networks and stuff, is that the case? Is that what you're seeing? Is there a dearth of care available, or is there something else?
So I think it's a combination of things. I mean, at a certain point, the statistics speak for themselves. We are only going to meet about 50% of the estimated mental health needs by 2035. And that is in spite of experiencing 6 times the average growth in the mental health field of providers coming in. What that doesn't take into account is the fact that overall the systems are not set up to be really sustainable right now. And so even though we are expected to increase the field employment wise, we also have quite a few individuals leaving the field too. I think kind of the response to that isn't that AI is coming in. I think it's that venture capital is coming in. A lot of these technology companies are coming in. And I always try to think the best of people and companies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, they are coming in with investors, and those investors want to get paid. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to get your money back on an investment. It's just that in the mental health field, the return on the investment comes at the cost of people's mental health. And I don't think people and their quality of life should be the thing that we're making money off of. I'm kind of a socialist in that way. So I think we have a space for some of these AI chatbots to do some basic level work, probably more so in just like coaching skills rather than actual therapy, because therapy is an art and a science. The number of thoughts that go through my head as I'm in even just a low key, almost easy session with a client is incredible, of thinking of what are all the things that they've told me before? What am I picking up on from their micro expressions, tone of voice, cadence, pressured speech, all of these things, the rapport that we have, where I think they're able to go to mentally and emotionally in that moment, where might be pushing them a little bit too far, all of the trainings that I've done throughout my years, all of this stuff, and then how I express that information. One of the things that I always tell my clients is that we kind of have a tiers of communication and how well we can communicate with other people. And the least communicative method is over text, right? Because we lose so much of that nuance. You can't hear how I'm delivering something. The number of times people have miscommunications happen when they're texting someone. I texted my friend the other day and I sent her something and she took me seriously when I was being sarcastic. And I was like, I forgot my emojis. Right. And then this is my best friend 25 years. So like
Right.
it will
Not the
happen.
end. Yeah.
Right? Exactly. And AI chatbots are over text. And even if you can have one that actually speaks to you, because sometimes they'll do that, it's a voice to text and they are not necessarily trained on all of these nuances necessarily of how you're saying something and how they're responding to you. And so then you have phone calls and that's a little bit better. And then you have visuals, so over video, which is even better. And then there's still something that is just kind of unexplained that really helps with a lot deeper, more personal communication that will happen when you're in person with someone, which is why people do have specific preferences about in-person versus telehealth for therapy. And I just don't think there's enough guardrails in place with AI right now to do a lot of that. And I'm also very concerned that the fact that our laws have not caught up with this technology in any way, shape, or form in order to protect individuals. You have these companies come in where they're doing things that are for the betterment of the company, not necessarily for the betterment of the individuals, whether that's the therapists or the actual clients who are experiencing the therapy. I forget which one, but there's another one of those VC platforms where they've let their clinicians know that they are going to start requiring that all sessions be recorded, audio and video, and they will be auditing to see if there's any medical necessity for having the session be that long in order to prevent insurance audits. I see your face, Jackie. Yeah, exactly. And yep. And so they're doing it to comply with insurance regulations because you are required to say that this is medically necessary. But that's also a judgment call. And so for me, medical necessity for my client, if we're doing some really intense trauma work, could look like it is not this big, heavy, let's go into the details kind of thing. It can look like we're just kind of casually touching on stuff. But really what we're doing is we're slowly expanding their distress tolerance and we're increasing their ability somebody to experience some of these things or to think about it in a different way. We're testing and seeing what their nervous system has capacity for, all of this stuff. But to an untrained person or to someone who is not super familiar with the case, this sounds like nothing. And it seems like they're also using AI to evaluate those sessions. And they're saying that they won't pay you if they think it doesn't meet medical criteria. And so now you've essentially just had a free session because,
Right.
technically, I guess they could just bill the client out of pocket for that. But then you get into this other dynamic of the client has had a session, has experienced the benefit of it, has thought that this meets criteria because it does, and then gets told, well, the company doesn't think so. So now instead of paying your $25 copay, it's $150. And that's not equitable or fair to anyone, really, except the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah, I could see that really putting a wrench in the trust development of,
Mhm.
like, is this safe for me to do? Or, am I not going to be able to afford groceries next week or gas or, something else?
Right.
I mean, it was already very concerning, though, that insurance companies would take notes and read,
Right.
therapist notes to just to make that determination. But now you're getting people's voices or images, and there's confidentiality there. Who's
Right.
really going to have access to that too? We were also
Mhm.
talking about Talkspace too, which was using some of that information to create chatbots too. So, like, I also wonder if, there's not other motives for doing that that might be, oh
Mhm.
yeah, and by the way, we can also use that information to train our chatbots or train AI to also do it. And you bring up, one of the most important points really is that therapy is an art and a science, and the training, kind of a chatbot to do that, it looks very different when you're really in a session. I think of my sessions as also being very collaborative. So there's
Mhm.
moment to moment stuff that can't relate to, a chatbot that gets co-created, and
Mhm.
you're not going to see that in working with AI in that moment, and kind of helping it unfold together. There's no togetherness there when, or relationship, right?
Yeah.
So it's really concerning,
Yeah.
all of
Well,
these changes, not for the better.
No.
yeah. And Sarah, you shared an article with us that we're going to link to from Brown. But it was really talking about like the ethical like violations that these chatbots, and platforms, even when prompted correctly or, with
Mhm.
forethought and stuff, which, a person in crisis might not be doing, like that they were still so faulty. And that's like not a huge surprise for people, I would think, who use AI. I use AI every day and, I am super distrustful of what it says to me. But like it's gotten me in trouble, even with Tony in the past. Like when I thought I was using it for the right reasons. Like you always have to, like I'm constantly like you have to double and triple check anything you get out of it and really look at it with such skepticism, which when you're going for therapy, that's not the purpose. Like
Right.
I don't go to a therapist looking for help and then think I got to be really skeptical of everything this person says to me. Like that's not the right foundation of the
Yeah.
relationship, right?
Well, and there's so many concerns too about AI being used to train people of it's being incorporated now into a lot of different college courses, into graduate work. Medical students may be getting trained using AI. Their professors may have used this. And so it's just really concerning how it's being applied. And the way I explained it to one of my kids, because he's like, oh, well, I can just ask Alexa anything and she'll tell me. And I, said, okay, ask her something. And she got it wrong. And he's like, "But why can't I?" Right? God bless him, he's 10. So, fortunately, we're in the shallow end of the AI will totally impact your life pool at this moment. But I told him, I said, "AI," I said, "Alexa, any of these things, they're like a calculator. You still have to go to math class. You still have to learn the equation. You still have to learn the theories and principles and everything else that underlie this. And you cannot, the tool, the calculator, is just meant to help applying some of this a little bit easier. It is not meant to actually replace the mathematical knowledge you need to learn. And I think this is where people are kind of getting it mixed up with AI, because it's also so integrative. And I think the fact that a lot of all these companies humanize it, is meant to feel more like talking to a person, and instinctively we trust a person's knowledge, as opposed to recognizing that, like, no, this is a computer. So actually, I don't, this is a calculator and I just don't trust it right off the bat.
Right. I love that
So we
analogy
have to
because,
do
like,
that,
you wouldn't, when you
right?
need a mathematician, you wouldn't settle for a calculator.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
100%. A
if you're dealing
calculator
with
will
some
help
sort of
you.
like giant calculus equation,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to do it, the calculator is like gonna get that done. You need the expertise of the person and the
Right. A
skills.
calculator will
Yeah.
help you balance your checkbook. It will not help you calculate the acceleration and velocity for a rocket going into space.
Right. And neither should I,
Right. And neither should I.
if I'm on that rocket at least.
Well, I'm reminded of the movie Hidden Figures, right?
Oh,
Have
yeah.
either of you guys seen
I
it?
love
Right?
that movie.
Great
That flashed
movie.
into my mind, actually, as we were talking about this.
Right?
She on the ladder with the chalkboard, like, up high on the wall, writing
Yes.
Yeah.
equations.
And
Yeah.
she's like, "Here you
Yeah.
go." And so it was right before the launch too, was another really great scene where, and I'm gonna totally forget the characters and actors' names, but before they launch, one of the astronauts is like, "No, a computer did this. I don't trust it. I want humans' eyes. I want her eyes on it. And I need to know that this was double checked and verified, right?" And so they had her go and they had her do all of the calculations by hand. And it wasn't until she double checked and said, "Yes, this is correct," that he's like, "Perfect. I trust her.
Yeah.
Let's go."
I think that's a beautiful metaphor for the place that the relationships and the trust and the humanity that's so necessary in the therapeutic space.
Let's keep
Mhm.
humans in the loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Yep.
keep humans in
And
the
let's
loop.
center them,
It's
please. In the
it's so
Yeah.
important. One of the things that's not really talked about is the rupture and repair that happens in therapy, which is really such an important part, because that's the part about relationships that happens over and over again. There's rupture and then there's repair, and we expect that in therapy relationships, and we want that because the working it out is actually how we change capacity and we
Mhm.
create distress tolerance. And if you have a chatbot who's doing everything perfectly, where there's no opportunity for a mismatch that can get shifted around. And then we have like something new emerging, and then we have, more insight and flexibility. So that's totally missing in that scenario. So this keeping the human in the loop is just, especially when it comes to mental health, is so important. We don't know what we don't know when when we only have AI taking care of things, or we only have technology taking care of things. So I'm so glad there are people like you out there, Sarah, helping people and helping communities. Thank you. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you'd like to plug to the audience at the end before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who is interested in working with me, they can absolutely reach me for individual work at rising-hope.co for my private practice. If you have a company or organization that you think could benefit from my services, mindfulhq.com. Interested in the directory, go to mindfulmatches.com. I can't wait to launch and I hope to see everyone there. And if you're a therapist and you're interested in continuing to have some of these conversations, I actually just started a Facebook group called A Different Way, Therapists Reimagining Private Practice. Launched it about 2.5 weeks ago, and we already have almost 300 members. So obviously this is a very popular kind of time to have a lot of these conversations. So we are in there talking about VC directories and what a sustainable caseload is and all of the different things that are impacting us as providers today. So those are my projects, my babies. Happy to have people join me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. Thank you for all the information you shared. We'll put the links to everything in our show notes. And we'll see you next week, Tony. Thank you for organizing this and for finding Sarah for us. This has been outstanding. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And we will catch you guys next week. Take care. Bye.